Advanced Vedic Astrology presentation from UAC conference. Learn about the source of Vedic astrology and the difference between the East and Western approaches. This is the first in a couple videos where I break all this down. Who are you and why you're here? So this is the recent presentation that I gave at a conference in Chicago called UAC, which means United Astrology Conference. And I was one of the few Vedic astrologers invited. I taught a couple classes. I'm going to be teaching both of them. And I'm going to start with this first one on advanced Vedic astrology. The second one is on applied Jaimini astrology. So this advanced Vedic astrology class that I taught basically took people, it was for quite a lot of folks who had a Western astrology background. So I integrated a lot of that, but it's also forced me to kind of start from the beginning and not assume that people really know the difference between Eastern and Western thought, different forms of astrology, or really anything. So I hope you enjoy this presentation. I do start with describing the words of the Rishi, Parara, in Vedic astrology. And so I start by quoting the beginning of Brihat Parashara Sastra, chapter 1, where it says in verses 9 through 12, Lord Vishnu, who is Lord of all matters, who has undefiled spirit, who is endowed with the three gunas, although he transcends the grip of gunas, who is the author of this universe, who is glorious, who is the cause, and who is endowed with valor, has no beginning. He authored the universe and administers it with 1/4 of his power. So 1/4 of this visible universe is administered by Lord Vishnu, 1/4 of his power. That's 1/4 of his power. Now, the Lord is in all beings, and the entire universe is in him. All beings contain both Jiva Atma and Paramatmans. Some have predominance of the former, while yet some have the latter in predominance. Paramatmans is predominant in the Grahas, Surya, etc., and Brahma, Shiva, and others. So their powers or consorts too have predominance of Paramatmans. Others have more Jiva Atmans. So in a general sense, what Parashara is saying to Maitreya, his student, is that the Grahas, or the planets, are in the same category of beings and entities as Brahma, Shiva, and the others. So literally, it just shows that our karma is presided over by these divine beings. And in fact, when we look at the planets, it's very easy to see them, especially if you understand them and you understand the age of the universe, as divine beings. Again, it's very strange that you'll see, and I see this even in yoga communities and cultures, that swamis will believe in Ganesha and Shiva and Brahma, but you start talking about astrology, and they don't believe that Jupiter is an entity. They think it's just a rock moving around. No, Parashara says very clearly that the grahas, the planets, are in the same category of beings as Brahma, Shiva, etc. Paramatmans is predominant in the grahas. So Paramatman means supreme self, and it says Jiva Atmans, and it says all beings contain both Jiva Atma, or the limited self, and Paramatmans, which are the supreme self. All beings have both. Some have a predominance of the Jiva, while some have the later, or the Paramatman, in predominance. Paramatman is predominant in the Grahas, Surya, etc., and Brahma, Shiva, and the others. Their powers or consorts too have a predominance of Paramatmans. So this is more about the Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu when he describes their consorts, but then he says others have more of Jiva Atmans, which means us. Other beings have more Jiva Atman than Paramatman. So then he goes on to chapter 2. He says, O Brahman, The four incarnations of Ram, Krishna, Narasimha, and Varaha are wholly with Paramatmans. The other incarnations than these out of the 9 have in them Jiva Atmans too. So he's saying that the incarnation of the Sun, Mars, the Sun, Moon, Mars, and Rahu are totally Paramatman, while the other ones have in them Jiva Atmans too. Then he says, the unborn Lord has many incarnations. He has incarnated as the 9 planets. Incarnated is not the best word. It should be emanated or something, because incarnate literally means coming forth based on karma. Of course, Lord Vishnu doesn't incarnate because it doesn't have karma, but he descends as an avatar. It's a technical point, but it was pointed out to me, and I wanted to point that out to you. But he has incarnated as the 9 planets to bestow on the living beings the results due to their karmas. He is Janardhan. He assumed the auspicious form of grahas to destroy the demons, or the evil forces, and sustain the divine beings. So Lord Vishnu has descended as the 9 planets to bestow on the living beings, the jivas, the results due to their karmas. He is Janardhan. I'll explain that in a minute. He has assumed the auspicious form of grahas to destroy the demons and sustain the divine beings. Now, Janardhana is that nature of Lord Vishnu who destroys Janma, or birth. This is why the Lagna is called the Janma Lagna, or Janma Nakshatra. Janma means birth. Brought about by ignorance, and bestows on the worshipper the awareness of his identity with the Lord. So Janardhana destroys the illusion of birth. You have this illusion that you were born, that this creature that you're walking around in, this creaturely form, is actually you, that you are that creature rather than a divine being. And so Lord Vishnu has come forth as the 9 planets and as the overseer of this matrix, as Janardhan, to destroy the illusion of birth, brought about by ignorance, and again to bestow upon the living beings the fruits due to their karmas in the form of Janardhan. So in bestowing on the living beings the results due to their karmas, he is fulfilling the mission of his nature as Janardhan, which is destroying this illusion of birth. Basically this illusion of form, because you have this illusion that you're this form when you're actually Supreme Self. And then he continues in chapter 2, 9:13, after completing the mission, the Paramatmans of the grahas again merge in their grahas. The Jiva Atma portions from the grahas take birth as human beings and live their lives according to their karma, and again merge in the grahas. At the time of the great destruction, the grahas as well merge in Lord Vishnu. The one who knows all of these will become versed in the knowledge of the past, present, and future. Without a knowledge of Jyotish, these cannot be known. Hence, everyone should have a knowledge of Jyotish, particularly the Brahman. So, very clearly, again, he says, after completing the missions, the Paramatmans of the respective grahas merge in the grahas. So, Lord Rama was an incarnation of the sun. When he was done his life as Lord Rama, he again merged back into the sun. Lord Krishna was an incarnation of the moon, or an avatar of the moon. Once Krishna was done his life, he merged back into the moon, etc. So the Jiva Atma portions, not the Paramatman portions, but the Jiva Atma portions take births as human beings and live their lives according to their karmas, and again merge in the grahas. At the time of the great destruction, the grahas as well merge in Lord Vishnu. So you come forth, you incarnate, because you have karma, and then at the time when your karma is done and your time is done, you, as a jiva, merge back into the grahas. Jiva Atma portions take birth as human beings, then live their lives according to their karmas, and then again merge back in the grahas. Then he continues on to chapter 3. then he said, he starts to explain, this is right when he starts to explain astrology, and I talk about this too because it's very clear. Right at the beginning of Parashar, he describes the zodiac. He says, Parashar, listen to the account of placement of the heavenly bodies. Out of the many luminous bodies sighted in the skies, some are stars and some are grahas. So some are fixed that are sitting there as stars. Others that are moving are planets. And he says those that have no movements are the nakshatras. Now the nakshatras are the specific taras or stars along the ecliptic. The ones that are moving are the grahas. And he says those are called grahas that move through the nakshatras in the zodiac. The zodiac comprises of 27 nakshatras, beginning with Ashwini. The same area is divided in 12 parts, equal to 12 rashis, beginning from Mesha, from Aries. So he says very clearly, nakshatras, that the zodiac starts with Ashwini, and then Mesha occupies 12 portions. Nakshatras occupy 27 portions starting from Ashwini. Rashis occupy 12 portions beginning from Mesha. The names of the grahas commence from Surya. The Rashi rising is known as Lagna. Based on Lagna and the grahas joining and departing from each other, the native's good and bad effects are deducted. So there's a very simple, clear statement of how to do astrology right at the beginning of Brihat Parashar Horasastra. So here is something that I put together for those at the conference that sort of dramatize this approach to astrology from an Eastern and a Western view. And when I say even, when I talk about Eastern and Western, I'm not necessarily saying that all Westerners have a Western view or all Easterners like Indians have an Eastern view, because we're now very kind of mixed up. These are different worldviews. They do tend to adhere to a geographical, resemblance, where people born in the East tend to have more of an Eastern view and in the West a more Western view. But of course, these are fluid concepts. A lot of Indians now, especially educated Indians who have come to the West, are in some ways more Western than Westerners. So, but I put this together so we can understand, especially how to approach the Indian and Eastern concepts. So I have these subjects here, and then the Western and the Eastern view. So let's take a subject like religion and spirituality. You want to subscribe, but even if you are subscribed, you want to click this little bell that says get notified about every new video. You want to click that, and then you will be notified, and it has the little ringer on after you do that. So make sure to do. The Western view is worship is the key. Eastern view is method is the key. So religion, spirituality, the Western religions are about worship. I believe in God. Jesus was this. This is the Western view. Eastern view is method is the key. You could, regardless of who you believe, what are you practicing? Yoga, meditation, not just in Hinduism, but Buddhism as well. Breathing. It's all about the practice. So spirituality is more about method, not religion and worship. This is a big difference between Eastern and West. When Westerners try to approach Eastern religion, they get hung up in their Western mindset. How can there be all these millions of gods and these with blue faces and elephant heads? That doesn't make sense. God's an old man in the sky with a beard that you believe in. Well, that's a whole different approach. In fact, worship itself is a method in the Eastern sense. Worship is part of bhakti yoga. Worship is a method. Worship is not spirituality. It's a facet of spirituality that is called faith. But faith without practice is just dogmatism. Because the faith comes after you practice. Once you do yoga, do pranayama, do the practices, then you're going to feel a deeper connection to something beyond. And that thing that's beyond is then referred to metaphysically in the form of the deities. That's actually what worship is supposed to be for. It's supposed to be that for the Western spirituality as well, but in fact, worship has replaced method in the Western paradigm. So to that end, God or Creator, in Western view, God is outside. God is the old man in the sky with the beard. Don't you get it? Well, in the Eastern sense, God is inside. God's not, all of those forms are, it doesn't matter what we call them because God is actually inside. The archetype, you could say an archetype, I got to be careful with that word because archetype is literally a Western concept, but the idea and the iconography or the metaphysical image of Ganesha or Shiva or Saraswati, that image is to evoke something inside because all of your divinity is inside. It's inside of everyone. Again, it's very easy then to come from a Western mindset and say, how can you say everyone is God? Everyone's not God. In the Eastern sense is everything is God, not even just every person. Everything is God because it comes forth from God consciousness, from awareness, from the one becoming many, and all of the multitude of Eastern metaphysics that go back into the mists of time. So again, in fact, when we talk about time in the afterlife, in the Western view, there's linear time. One life, you're born, and it's a timeline. It's a line. Get it right, believe in this God, or go to hell forever. You're plopped down in some linear time structure. Well, in the Eastern view, time is a wheel, a cycle, a circle of karma. Things come back. You do something, it comes back to you in another lifetime, in another place. Time is not a line, it is a wheel. Very important, the wheel of samsara, the wheel of illusion. It's very important because in the East, we are trying to get off the wheel. The East says, do you want to keep reincarnating over and over again and keep doing this thing over and over again, this wheel that keeps grinding and turning over and over again? No, we want to get off the wheel because we're just kind of like literally like a kind of hamster on a wheel. Whereas, again, Western is very much like it's a timeline. You're born, you die, that's it, that's all you get. And in that amount of time, you better make salvation with the God up there and worship him because that's it. You got your shot, right? So very different. Go to hell forever. Go to hell forever or go to heaven forever. There's not that wheel. Matter and form, very important. Western view is about substance over essence. I know I'm this body. I know there's this cup. I know that's what it is, and I can infer that it has some kind of energy, I guess, some kind of feeling and psychology. But spirit, who knows? So I know there's matter, and I do know that matter has feeling and emotion because I know that I have feeling and emotion, and animals have that. But spirit, something beyond, who knows? Who knows if there's something beyond? Who knows if there's an essence? Well, in the Eastern sense, essence is important. It's the essence that's the reality. The reality is the essence. Then the essence, the spirit filters down into psychology and feeling, and that gets expressed through form. This is the Eastern view, is that the essence is the reality. The form is the illusion, called Maya. This is why it says you can't trust the form. If you want to change the form, you need to change the essence. Now, of course, Western metaphysics is starting to change around those things, but Western sciences haven't. Metaphysics that have come, for the last couple of hundred years especially, we consider that, but even Western allopathic medicine barely considers the essence. Of course, it's starting to now, but what does it say to do? It says to do things like yoga, meditation. Well, that's an Eastern thing. So even the West is starting to come around now, but they're different worldviews. So when we get into things like the health and the sciences, easy pivot. In the health and the sciences, the observed is the key. You observe matter. You put it under a microscope. You make it really small, you make it really large. Reality is what I can see in the West. Literally, it's mainly about what we can see, or of course smell or cognize with our senses. That's the reality. Again, it goes into the matter form, but health and sciences especially, we see this, right? And in the Eastern view, the observer is key. Not the observed, but the observer. We're the focal point of everything, and we should understand also that even now as we push quantum physics to its, or as quantum physics shows us the true nature of reality, we understand that in quantum physics, the observer is also the key in quantum physics. things that make no sense. If you're not sure, look at the double slit experiment and how particles or form actually behave like waves with infinite possibility until they're observed. Then once an observer intercedes, the wave becomes a particle and becomes a specific thing. So again, very different approach to life, illusion, what's real and what's not real, right? In the West, the form is real and the essence is a fantasy or unreal, and we need to sort of believe in it or not believe in it, but who really knows? In the East, that essence is what's real, and the form is, who knows, real or unreal, we're not really sure, right? So again, that approach to health is also very important. Western medicine, very much about taking drugs and examining the form, not treating the root cause, which is the essence. Ayurveda, for example, uses all kinds of spiritual healing to change physical healing. It's the foundation of it. So even when we look at things like time itself and the calendar, in the West we have the Gregorian calendar, which does a pretty good job of trying to approximate the Earth going around the sun, and then 12 30-degree cycles within that, which are the 12 lunation cycles. But it doesn't do anything in relationship to those soli lunar cycles, which has to do with those cycles that we're all living. When the sun and moon come together, that begins the cycle, the month in Indian culture. All of their celebrations and whatnot are timed to the new moons and the full moons. Now, they also use Gregorian calendar for references and things like that, but they're basic, for like a civil calendar, but they're in most parts of India, especially with the celebrations, it's completely timed around new moon and full moon. Guru Purnima means the full moon of the Guru. Navratri starts on the first lunar day after the new moon. Same way with, Diwali, and all of their celebrations are soli lunar based. Their calendar is still in harmony with the rhythms, and that includes Chinese as well. Chinese New Year happens on a new moon, right? So the East is totally still connected to the rhythms of the solar system, the sun, moon, and earth. Western, we're very much Gregorian calendar, very much about the sun, the earth going around the sun, right? And this is why the astrology also has that quality, very much sun sign astrology rather than cosmic astrology, and related to the sidereal stellar placements. Western astrology even was based on the earth going around the sun and the seasons, which is very Terra-centric rather than universe-centric. So the astrology disconnected from the sciences and the culture in West. In the East, it's connected to the sciences, culture, and karma itself. So in Western astrology, there's no relationship to astrology and medical system, spiritual system. If you told your priest you were going to an astrologer, he wouldn't be very happy with you. If you told your doctor that you were getting astrological advice, he wouldn't be very impressed. In India and Asian countries, it's very different. They understand your natal chart. Ayurveda is totally, a sister science to astrology and all of that stuff. So when we look even culturally at astrology in the East and the West, people got to be very careful. And again, you want to remember, I was teaching this at a Western astrology conference, so people are very myopic. Here in the West, I live in the West, and people talk about astrology, they're really talking about Western astrology. When they say, and this is what I hear from people in the West all the time, astrology will never be proven as a science. It's not a science. The scientific community will never accept astrology. This is total Western astrology stuff. In the East, in India, it's not like that at all. The Supreme Court of India declared astrology a science. It is totally scientific. It's totally seen as a science. So I put this in context for my Western astrology audience to just say, look, you got to realize something. You live in the West, okay? In most of the world, astrology is seen as a science. And it's also practiced scientifically. Again, I wasn't taking any shots or swipes at Western astrologers, but honestly, most Western astrologers will also say astrology is not a science. They'll say it's an art, it's this, it's that. And so these Western astrology students, many of them were used to hearing this idea that astrology is not a science. And I said, wait a second, yes it is. It's connected to their sciences, that's why. And here in the West, it's just kind of bolted on to some weird belief system or some strange thing. And in fact, this is even what people think in the West. They think astrology is some belief that people have, and it's not. Again, if you lived in India, it wouldn't be this weird belief. It's practiced scientifically, and from a very early age, people understand its value. Again, because they're connected to these other things like the calendar and the health sciences, and they just come to understand the worldview that essence over substance, the wheel of time and karma, God is inside, not outside. And so all of these other things in the Eastern view prepare the mind to understand the just plausibility that Vedic astrology is not just that astrology is not just a weird belief system kind of bolted on to the real sciences like medicine and astronomy and physics and other sciences, real sciences. What are you saying calling astrology a science? That's just some weird thing over there. Well, not in India. It's not that at all. This is about 1/3 of the presentation. I'm going to do the rest of the presentation in a couple more videos over the next few days. Stay tuned for that.